The alien ships descended from the sky like shards of polished glass catching the sunlight. They moved with a grace that seemed almost unnatural, gliding silently over the sprawling cityscape of New York. People stopped in their tracks, craning, their necks upward as the massive vessels cast long shadows across the streets below. The air buzzed with murmurs of disbelief and excitement mixed with an undercurrent of fear. No one knew why they were here or what they wanted, but everyone felt the weight of the moment pressing down on them. At the United Nations headquarters, a group of representatives stood waiting, their faces tense but composed. Among them was Daniel Harper, a man known for his calm demeanor even in the most chaotic situations. His dark hair was neatly combed back, and his suit was impeccably pressed, though sweat beaded at his temples. Beside him stood Claire Bennett, her sharp green eyes scanning the horizon as if trying to read something in the alien ship's movements. She clutched a small device in her hands, its blinking lights signaling it was ready to translate whatever language the visitors might speak. When the largest ship finally came to a halt above the building, a beam of light shot down, illuminating a patch of ground near the entrance. Slowly, figures began to emerge from the brightness. They were tall, taller than any human, their forms shimmering as though made of liquid metal. Their features shifted constantly, never settling into anything recognizable yet somehow managing to convey expressions, curiosity, confidence, and perhaps a hint of amusement. The leader stepped forward, her presence commanding attention. Her form solidified slightly more than the others, taking on a humanoid shape with glowing eyes that seemed to pierce through everyone she looked at. Her voice resonated through the area, deep and melodic, carried by some unseen technology. "We are Zanari," she said, her words translated instantly by Claire's device. "We have come to understand your kind." Daniel took a step forward, his posture relaxed but alert. "Welcome," he said, his voice steady despite the knot forming in his stomach. "I am Daniel Harper, representing the people of Earth. We are honored by your visit." The alien tilted her head slightly, studying him with those piercing eyes. "You may call me Zinara," she replied. "And I must ask, why do you not have a god of war?" The question hung in the air, heavy and unexpected. For a moment no one spoke. The silence stretched until it became uncomfortable, broken only by the distant hum of the alien ships hovering above. Daniel blinked, caught off guard. He glanced at Claire, who gave him a subtle nod, urging him to respond. Clearing his throat, Daniel chose his words carefully. "Humans have evolved beyond the need for gods," he explained. "We rely on reason and cooperation to resolve our conflicts now. Gods are part of our history, but not our present." Zinara's expression didn't change, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes. Disbelief, maybe, or disappointment. "That is unusual," she said after a pause. "Every advanced civilization we have encountered reveres a god of war. It is a symbol of strength, unity, and purpose. Without one, how do you justify your battles? How do you inspire courage in your warriors?" Claire stepped forward then, her grip tightening on the translation device. "Not all civilizations view war the same way," she interjected. "For humans, conflict is often seen as a failure, a breakdown of communication or understanding. We strive to avoid it whenever possible." Zinara turned her gaze to Claire, studying her intently. "Yet you fight," she countered. "Your history is filled with wars, both large and small. You conquer, you destroy, you rebuild. Such actions suggest a deeper drive, a primal force guiding you. A god of war would explain this." Claire hesitated, unsure how to respond. She glanced at Daniel again, searching for support, but he seemed lost in thought, his brow furrowed. Finally, she spoke, her voice quieter now. "Maybe we don't need a god to explain those things. Maybe we're just complicated." Zinara let out, a sound that could have been laughter or disdain. "Complicated," she repeated, testing the word. "An interesting choice, but insufficient. Tell me, humans, If you truly lack a god of war, then what guides you when survival depends on victory? What drives you when compassion fails? No one answered immediately. The question lingered, unsettling in its implications. Around them, the other representatives shifted uneasily, exchanging nervous glances. Some whispered among themselves, debating whether to intervene. Others simply stared at the ground, unwilling to meet Zinara's gaze. Daniel finally broke the silence. "Survival itself is enough," he said firmly. "When faced with threats, humans adapt. We find solutions. We protect each other. That's what drives us, not gods, but the will to live." Zinara regarded him for a long moment, her shimmering form radiating an aura of power that made it hard to hold her gaze. Then she nodded slowly, though it wasn't clear if she believed him. "Perhaps," she said, "but I wonder, how long can such ideals endure? Compassion is admirable, but it is also fragile. When tested, does it break?" Before Daniel could respond, Zinara raised a hand, silencing him. "Enough talk for now," she announced. "We will observe further. Prove to us that your ways are worthy of respect, or prepare to face the consequences." With that, she turned and walked back toward the beam of light, her companions following closely behind. As they disappeared into their ship, the glow faded, leaving the humans standing in stunned silence. The crowd outside erupted into noise, shouts, questions, exclamations, but inside the UN building, the atmosphere remained heavy, charged with tension. Claire exhaled sharply, lowering the translation device. "That didn't go well," she muttered, rubbing her temples. "They think we're weak because we don't have a god of war." Daniel shook his head, his mind racing. "It's not about weakness," he said. "It's about perspective. They see war as something to glorify, while we see it as something to avoid. But they won't understand that unless we show them." Claire frowned, looking up at him. "How do we do that? They're not going to take our word for it." Daniel didn't answer right away. Instead, he gazed out at the city skyline, where the alien ships still loomed like silent sentinels. "We'll figure it out," he said eventually. "We have to." As the two of them stood there, the enormity of the situation settled over them. This wasn't just about diplomacy or proving humanity's worth. It was about survival. And if they couldn't convince the aliens of their value, Earth might pay the ultimate price. The meeting with the aliens left a deep mark on everyone involved. Back at the United Nations headquarters, the atmosphere was tense. World leaders gathered in a large conference room, their faces showing a mix of frustration and fear. Some argued, loudly, while others sat quietly, lost in thought. The question Zinara had asked, why humans didn't have a god of war, had sparked debates that showed no signs of ending. Daniel Harper stood near the front of the room, watching as tempers flared. He knew the situation was delicate. If they couldn't come up with an answer that satisfied the aliens, the consequences could be catastrophic. Claire Bennett sat beside him, her notebook open, jotting down ideas. She looked just as exhausted as he felt, but there was determination in her eyes. "We need to give them something," one of the leaders said, slamming his fist on the table. "They're testing us. If we don't prove ourselves, they'll see us as weak." Another leader shook her head. "We can't lie to them. They'll know if we make up some story about having a god of war. We've moved past gods. That's the truth." "But is it enough?" Someone else chimed in. "They said every advanced civilization has one. What if they think we're too primitive because we don't?" Claire leaned forward, her voice cutting through the noise. "Maybe we don't need to lie. Maybe we can find something real to show them, something from our history that proves we're not as weak as they think." The room fell silent. Everyone turned to look at her, curious but skeptical. Daniel nodded slowly. "What do you mean, Claire? Are you talking about mythology?" She hesitated before answering. "Yes, there might be something in our old myths that could help. A forgotten god of war, maybe. Something they wouldn't expect." The idea seemed far-fetched, but no one had a better suggestion. After a brief discussion, The group agreed to let Claire dig deeper into ancient texts. With Daniel's support, she was given access to archives and libraries around the world. It was a long shot, but it was all they had. Over the next few days, Claire buried herself in research. She spent hours poring over dusty books and digital records, searching for any mention of a god of war that had been erased from modern memory. At first, she found nothing. Most civilizations had worshipped gods of war at some point, but those deities were well known: Mars, Ares, Odin. None of them fit what she was looking for. Then, late one night, she stumbled across something unusual. In an obscure collection of myths from Eastern Europe, she found references to a deity named Kalor. According to the stories, Kalor had once been revered as a god of war, but his role was different from others. He wasn't just a bringer of chaos or destruction, he was also a protector of peace, urging restraint even in battle. Claire's heart raced as she read more. The legends described how warriors grew angry with Kalor for refusing to glorify senseless violence. Instead of fueling their bloodlust, he encouraged them to seek solutions without unnecessary killing. Over time, his followers turned against him, accusing him of being too soft. Eventually, they bound him with chains forged from their own hatred and tore him apart. Her hands trembled as she flipped through the pages. The story was fragmented, incomplete, but the implications were clear. Kalor hadn't simply faded away like other forgotten gods. He had been killed, not by enemies, but by his own people. And after his death, humanity stopped believing in gods altogether. Claire immediately called Daniel. "I think I found something," she said when he answered. "A god of war who wasn't what you'd expect. His name was Kalor." Daniel listened intently as she explained what she had discovered. When she finished, he was silent for a moment. "Do you think this could work?" he asked finally. "I don't know," Claire admitted. "But it's worth trying. If we can, show the aliens that we once had a god of war, even one who was rejected, it might convince them we're not as weak as they think." "Where do we start?" Daniel asked. "There's a historian who specializes in mythology," Claire replied. "His name is Ethan Cole. He lives out in the mountains. If anyone knows more about Kalor, it's him." The journey to Ethan Cole's cabin took hours. The roads wound through dense forests and rocky terrain, growing narrower and rougher the farther they went. By the time they arrived, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the landscape. The cabin itself was small and weathered, surrounded by stacks of books and strange artifacts. Ethan greeted them at the door, his beard streaked with gray and his clothes patched and worn. Despite his unkempt appearance, his eyes were sharp and intelligent. "You're here about Kalor," he said before either of them could speak. It wasn't a question. "Yes," Daniel replied. "How did you know?" Ethan chuckled. "Not many people come knocking on my door unless they're desperate. And Kalor isn't exactly common knowledge." He led them inside, where shelves lined every wall, crammed with books and scrolls. A fire crackled in the hearth, casting a warm glow over the room. Ethan gestured for them to sit, then poured 3 cups of tea. "Tell me why you're interested in him," he said, handing them each a cup. Claire took a sip before speaking. "Aliens have arrived on Earth," she began. "They asked why we don't have a god of war. We're trying to prove to them that we're not weak, but we need something tangible to show them, something real." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "And you think Kalor is the answer?" "We hope so," Daniel said. From what Claire found, he was different from other gods of war. He valued peace as much as conflict, but his story ends badly. His followers turned on him and killed him. Ethan nodded slowly. "That's true. Kalor was unique. He believed war should only be a last resort, never a tool for domination. But humans weren't ready for that kind of philosophy. They wanted a god who would justify their aggression, not challenge it." "Is there any way to bring him back?" Claire asked hesitantly. "To show the aliens that we once had a god like that?" Ethan leaned back in his chair, stroking his beard thoughtfully. "There's a place," he said after a pause. "An ancient temple buried deep in the mountains. It's said to hold Kalor's essence, trapped there after his death. If you can reach it, you might be able to awaken him. Claire and Daniel exchanged glances. The idea sounded impossible, but they didn't have any other options. "Can you take us there?" Daniel asked. Ethan sighed. "It won't be easy. The path is dangerous and the temple is hidden. But if you're serious about this, I'll guide you." The trek to the temple tested their endurance. The trail was steep and treacherous, with loose rocks and icy patches making every step precarious. Ethan led the way, his familiarity with the terrain evident in his steady pace. Claire and Daniel followed closely, their breaths coming in short gasps as the altitude increased. After hours of climbing, they reached a narrow ledge overlooking a valley. Below, nestled among jagged cliffs, lay the ruins of the temple. Its stone walls were cracked and crumbling, half buried beneath layers of earth and moss. Despite its decay, the structure radiated an aura of power, almost palpable in the cold air. "This is it," Ethan said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Be careful. Places like this tend to guard their secrets fiercely." They descended carefully, their footsteps echoing softly against the rocks. Inside the temple, carvings covered the walls, depicting scenes of Kalor's life and death. Warriors knelt before him, offering swords and shields. Others scowled, raising weapons in defiance. At the center of the chamber stood a pedestal, its surface etched with glowing runes. Claire approached it cautiously, her heart pounding. She placed her hand on the pedestal, feeling a surge of energy course through her. Visions flooded her mind, images of Kalor standing tall on a battlefield, his presence calming even the fiercest warriors. Then came darker visions. Chains wrapping around him, his body breaking apart as his followers screamed in rage. "He's still here," she whispered, pulling her hand away. "Trapped, waiting for someone to free him." Ethan nodded grimly. "The incantation is carved into the pedestal. Speak it and he'll awaken." Claire hesitated, glancing at Daniel. He gave her a reassuring nod. Taking a deep breath, she began to recite the words aloud. They sounded strange, almost musical, reverberating through the chamber like a chant. As the final syllable left her lips, the ground trembled. Light erupted from the pedestal, filling the room with brilliance. A figure emerged from the swirling energy, a being of radiant light and shadow, both beautiful and terrifying. His eyes glowed with an inner fire, and his voice echoed like 1,000 voices speaking in unison. "You called me back," he said, his gaze sweeping over them. "Why?" Daniel stepped forward, his voice steady despite the awe he felt. "We need your help. Aliens have come to Earth questioning our worth as a species. They believe we lack strength because we don't have a god of war. We want to show them that we're not weak, that we once had someone like you." Kalor studied him silently, his expression unreadable. "And what makes you think I will agree to this?" he asked. "Because we're willing to learn," Claire said quickly. "We've made mistakes in the past, but we're trying to do better. Please, help us prove that." For a long moment, Kalor said nothing. Then he nodded slowly. "Very well," he said. "But remember, I am not what they expect. My strength lies not in destruction, but in balance." The journey back to the city was quiet, the weight of what they had done hanging over them. Kalor walked among them, his form shifting between light and shadow, making it hard for anyone to look at him directly for too long. He didn't speak much, but his presence was enough to fill the silence. Claire and Daniel exchanged occasional glances, unsure how to feel about bringing a god back into the world. They had hoped Kalor would help them prove humanity's worth to the aliens, but now that he was here, the reality of their decision felt overwhelming. When they arrived at the United Nations headquarters, chaos greeted them. News of the aliens' ultimatum had spread worldwide, sparking panic and protests. People were divided. Some demanded action against the visitors, while others pleaded for peace. Inside the building, leaders argued fiercely, their voices echoing through the halls. The tension was palpable, almost suffocating. Daniel led Kalor and Claire into the conference room, where the alien delegation awaited them. Zinara stood at the center, her shimmering form radiating calm authority. Her glowing eyes flickered as she noticed Kalor entering the room. For the first time since their arrival, her expression showed genuine surprise. This is unexpected, Zainara said, her voice resonating like distant thunder. You claim to lack a god of war, yet you bring one before us. Kalor stepped forward, his movements fluid and deliberate. I am Kalor, he said, his voice deep and steady, carrying an otherworldly echo. Once revered by your kind, though not as you might expect. Zainara tilted her head, studying him intently. Explain yourself. Kalor met her gaze without hesitation. I am not a god of destruction or conquest. My purpose was to guide humanity toward balance, to teach them when to fight and when to seek peace. But they turned against me, believing I was too weak to lead them in battle. Claire felt a chill run down her spine as she listened. She had read the legends, but hearing Kalor speak made the story feel alive, raw. Zainara's reaction was equally unsettling. The alien leaders' expression shifted, curiosity mingling with skepticism. Balance, Zainara repeated, testing the word. A noble concept, perhaps. But tell me, Kalor, how does balance serve in war? War demands strength, resolve, and sacrifice. It is not a place for hesitation. Kalor's eyes glowed brighter, his tone firm but calm. War is not merely about killing. True strength lies in achieving victory while preserving what matters most. Destruction without purpose leads only to ruin. Balance ensures survival, not just for one side, but for all. The room fell silent. Even the humans present seemed unsure how to respond. To them, Kalor's words sounded foreign, almost naive. War had always been brutal, chaotic, and unforgiving. Yet there was something compelling about his philosophy, something that struck a chord deep within them. Zainara narrowed her glowing eyes, clearly unimpressed. Words are easy, she said. Actions prove worth. If you wish to convince us of your value, you must demonstrate your strength. We will test you, and your so-called god, in a simulated battlefield. Only then will we judge whether you deserve to exist. The challenge sent a ripple of unease through the room. Simulated battles were common among advanced civilizations, used to measure tactical skill and combat readiness. But this wasn't just a game. It was a matter of survival. If humanity failed, the aliens would see no reason to spare Earth. Preparations began immediately. The aliens transported Daniel, Claire, Kalor, and a select group of human representatives to their flagship orbiting the planet. The ship was vast, its interior sleek and metallic, with corridors that seemed to stretch endlessly. The air hummed with energy, and the walls glowed faintly, casting everything in an eerie light. The simulation chamber was unlike anything the humans had ever seen. It was a massive dome, its surface covered in intricate patterns that pulsed with color. When activated, the chamber would generate a fully immersive environment, a virtual battlefield designed to push its participants to their limits. Before the trial began, Zainara addressed the group. This simulation will test your ability to adapt, strategize, and overcome obstacles. You will face enemies who will not hesitate to destroy you. Victory requires not only strength, but also cunning. Fail, and your fate will be sealed. Daniel swallowed hard, his hands trembling slightly. He glanced at Claire, who looked equally nervous, and then at Kalor, whose expression remained unreadable. Despite his earlier confidence, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap. As the simulation started, the chamber transformed around them. They found themselves standing on a barren wasteland, the sky dark and stormy. In the distance, enemy forces advanced, a mix of humanoid figures and mechanical constructs armed with weapons that crackled with energy. The humans instinctively formed a defensive line, their weapons raised. Kalor stood apart from them, his form shimmering faintly. "Do not fear," he said, his voice calm but commanding. "Follow my lead, and we will prevail." At first, the humans hesitated, unsure how to fight alongside a being they barely understood. But as the battle unfolded, Kalor revealed his true nature. He moved with precision, dodging attacks and countering with devastating force. Yet his actions weren't driven by aggression. They were calculated, aimed at minimizing casualties, while achieving maximum impact. He guided the humans with clarity, teaching them to anticipate enemy movements and exploit weaknesses. Focus on the commanders, he instructed. Without leadership, their forces will falter. His advice proved invaluable, allowing the group to dismantle the enemy ranks efficiently. Despite their initial doubts, the humans began to trust Kaelor's guidance. Under his direction, they worked together seamlessly, their coordination improving with each passing moment. Even Claire, who had never held a weapon before, found herself contributing, using her quick thinking to outmaneuver opponents. The aliens observing the simulation grew increasingly uneasy. Zinara watched silently, her glowing eyes fixed on Kaelor. "This is unusual," she muttered to one of her advisors. "Their tactics are efficient, yet restrained. They avoid unnecessary destruction." Her advisor nodded. "It is as if they are fighting not to conquer, but to survive." As the battle raged on, the humans faced new challenges, traps, ambushes, and environmental hazards that tested their resolve. Each time, Kaelor adapted effortlessly, his presence inspiring confidence in those around him. He shielded the group from danger, deflecting attacks and creating opportunities for counterstrikes. But the simulation wasn't just about combat, it was also about endurance. The longer the trial went on, the more exhausted the humans became. Their movements slowed, their reflexes dulled. Kaelor noticed and adjusted his strategy accordingly, taking on a larger share of the burden to protect them. Finally, after what felt like hours, the last enemy fell. The simulation ended abruptly, the battlefield dissolving into darkness. The humans collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath, their bodies aching from the strain. Kaelor stood tall, his form unwavering. Zinara approached him, her expression unreadable. "You have performed admirably," she admitted. "Your methods are unconventional but effective. However, I must ask, are you truly a god of war, or are you something else entirely?" Kaelor met her gaze steadily. "I am what I have always been, a guide, a teacher, a protector. Strength is not measured by how many you destroy, but by how much you preserve. That is the essence of war." Zinara studied him for a long moment, her thoughts hidden behind her glowing eyes. Then she turned to the humans, her voice echoing through the chamber. "You have shown courage and ingenuity. Your willingness to adapt and persevere has earned our respect, but remember, the path to survival is fraught with challenges. Do not grow complacent." With that, she signaled for the simulation chamber to deactivate. The humans were transported back to Earth, their minds reeling from the experience. As they stepped off the alien ship, they knew their lives and the future of humanity had changed forever. Kaelor lingered behind, watching as the sun rose over the horizon. His task was complete, but his presence lingered, a reminder of the lessons he had taught. Humanity had faced its past, confronted its fears, and emerged stronger than before. And though Kaelor would soon fade away, his legacy would endure. For they had learned that sometimes the greatest battles are fought within. The aftermath of the simulation left everyone shaken, though for different reasons. The humans who had participated in the trial were physically and mentally drained, their bodies aching from the strain of battle while their minds struggled to process what they had experienced. Daniel Harper leaned against a wall outside the United Nations building, his suit wrinkled and his face pale. Claire Bennett sat nearby on a bench, staring blankly at the ground, her hands clasped tightly together. Both of them felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on them. They had represented humanity, and now they would have to explain everything to the world. Kaelor stood apart from the group, his shimmering form drawing curious glances from passers-by. He didn't speak much, but his presence was impossible to ignore. People whispered among themselves, unsure whether to feel awe or fear. Some believed he was a savior, sent to protect Earth from destruction. Others saw him as a threat, a relic of a time humanity had long since abandoned. Either way, his arrival had changed things in ways no one could fully understand yet. Inside the UN headquarters, leaders from around the globe gathered once again, this time with renewed urgency. The aliens' ultimatum still loomed over them, but there was a cautious optimism in the air. Zinara's words during the simulation, her acknowledgement of humanity's courage and ingenuity, had given them hope. Still, questions remained. What did the aliens truly want? Had Kaylor's intervention been enough to convince them? Daniel addressed the assembled leaders, his voice steady despite the exhaustion etched into his face. "We've shown them that. We're capable of adapting and working together," he said. "But I don't think it's over. They'll be watching us closely, testing us in ways we can't predict." Claire nodded in agreement. Kaylor made an impression on them, but I'm not sure they fully understood him or trusted him. We need to keep proving ourselves, not just to them, but to each other. Her words sparked murmurs of debate. Some argued that humanity should focus on rebuilding trust with the aliens, offering gestures of goodwill to demonstrate their peaceful intentions. Others insisted on preparing for conflict, fearing that the aliens might see hesitation as weakness. The tension in the room was palpable, a reflection of the uncertainty gripping the entire planet. Amidst the chaos, Kaylor stepped forward, his glowing eyes scanning the crowd. When he spoke, his voice carried a quiet authority that silenced the room instantly. "You misunderstand the challenge before you," he said. "This is not about war or peace, it is about balance. Strength without wisdom leads to ruin. Wisdom without strength invites domination. You must find harmony between the two if you wish to endure." His words resonated deeply, even if not everyone agreed with them. For centuries, humanity had been divided by ideologies, cultures, and beliefs. Kaylor's philosophy offered a new perspective, one that demanded unity and self-awareness. But old habits die hard, and skepticism lingered in many minds. Days passed and the aliens remained in orbit, their ships visible in the night sky like silent observers. News outlets speculated endlessly about their intentions, fueling both fear and curiosity. Governments scrambled to prepare for any outcome, strengthening defenses while simultaneously reaching out through diplomatic channels. It was a delicate balancing act, one that required constant vigilance. Meanwhile, Kaylor spent much of his time wandering the streets of New York City, observing humanity in its rawest form. He walked unnoticed among crowds, listening to conversations, watching interactions. He saw kindness and cruelty, cooperation and conflict, all the contradictions that defined the human experience. Occasionally, people recognized him and approached him cautiously, asking questions or seeking guidance. Kaylor answered patiently, always emphasizing the importance of balance and understanding. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Kaylor found himself standing near a park where children played under the watchful eyes of their parents. A young boy ran up to him, his face lit with excitement. "Are you really a god?" the boy asked, his voice filled with wonder. Kaylor knelt down to meet the child's gaze. "I am what you make me," he replied gently. "If you see strength in me, then I am strong. If you see wisdom, then I am wise. But remember this, the greatest power lies within yourself." The boy frowned, clearly confused, but nodded solemnly before running back to join his friends. Kaylor watched him go, a faint smile playing across his features. Humanity was flawed, yes, but it was also full of potential. Whether they chose to embrace it was up to them. Back at the UN, discussions continued late into the night. The aliens had issued a new directive, a second trial, this time involving representatives from multiple nations. The goal was to assess humanity's ability to collaborate on a global scale, transcending borders and rivalries. Failure would mean annihilation. Success might buy them more time, or perhaps even acceptance. Daniel and Claire were tasked with organizing the effort, coordinating teams from countries that had spent decades locked in political standoffs. It was a monumental challenge, requiring patience, diplomacy, and compromise. Tensions flared repeatedly, threatening to derail the entire operation. At times it seemed hopeless, but Kaylor remained a steadying influence. Whenever arguments erupted, he intervened calmly, reminding everyone of the stakes. Your differences are not weaknesses, he told them. They are opportunities to learn, to grow, to become stronger together. Do not let pride blind you to the truth. Slowly, painfully, progress was made. Rival factions began setting aside grudges, focusing instead on the common goal of survival. Plans were drawn up, strategies refined, resources pooled. By the time the day of the second trial arrived, a fragile sense of unity had taken root. The trial took place aboard the alien flagship once again, in a chamber larger and more complex than the previous one. This time, the participants included not only soldiers and strategists, but also scientists, engineers, and diplomats. Their mission was simple in theory, but daunting in practice. Navigate a series of escalating challenges designed to test every aspect of their capabilities, physical, mental, and emotional. As the simulation began, the environment shifted constantly, forcing the teams to adapt quickly. One moment they were navigating treacherous terrain. The next, they were solving intricate puzzles under pressure. Communication became key, as did trust. Missteps led to setbacks, but lessons were learned, and bonds were forged. Throughout it all, Kaylor guided them with unwavering calm. He moved effortlessly between groups, offering advice and encouragement without ever taking control. His presence inspired confidence, helping to bridge gaps between individuals who might otherwise have clashed. At one point, a critical failure threatened to unravel everything. A miscommunication caused two teams to work against each other, resulting in heavy losses. Frustration boiled over, tempers flaring as accusations flew. Just when it seemed the situation would spiral out of control, Kaylor stepped in. "Stop," he commanded, his voice cutting through the noise like a blade. "Blame will not save you. Only cooperation can. Look at yourselves. You are stronger together than apart. Prove it now, or fail." His words struck a nerve. Slowly, reluctantly, the teams regrouped, putting aside their differences to focus on the task at hand. Together, they devised a plan that turned the tide, turning near disaster into triumph. By the end of the trial, the humans emerged victorious, not because they had dominated their opponents, but because they had worked together, overcoming obstacles through ingenuity and teamwork. Even the aliens seemed impressed, though they masked their reactions behind unreadable expressions. Zainara addressed the group once more, her tone measured but sincere. "You have proven yourselves resilient," she said. "Your ability to unite in the face of adversity is commendable. Perhaps your lack of a traditional god of war is not a flaw, but a strength. Time will tell." With that, the aliens departed, leaving Earth untouched, for now. As their ships disappeared into the stars, the humans stood in silence, their hearts heavy with relief and resolve. They had faced their fears, confronted their flaws, and emerged stronger than before. Kaylor faded away soon after, his purpose fulfilled. Before vanishing completely, he spoke one last time. "Remember this lesson," he urged. "Strength without wisdom is meaningless. May you never forget it." And so, humanity moved forward, carrying the lessons of the past into an uncertain future. They had no god of war, but they had something greater, the capacity to choose their own path. The departure of the alien ships left Earth in a state of uneasy calm. For days, people stared up at the sky, half expecting the vessels to return. But they didn't. The aliens had vanished as suddenly as they had arrived, leaving behind only questions and the lingering weight of their judgment. Humanity had been given a reprieve, but no one knew how long it would last. In the weeks that followed, life slowly began to return to normal, or at least as close to normal as it could be after such an event. News outlets continued to speculate about the aliens' motives, dissecting every word Zainara had spoken during her time on Earth. Governments held meetings behind closed doors, debating whether to prepare for war or focus on diplomacy. Scientists analyzed data collected from the alien ships, searching for clues about their technology and intentions. Meanwhile, ordinary people went about their daily routines, trying to shake off the sense of unease that clung to them like a shadow. For Daniel Harper and Claire Bennett, however, things were far from normal. They had become symbols of humanity's resilience, hailed as heroes by some and scrutinized by others. Reporters camped outside their homes, eager for interviews. Politicians sought their advice, hoping to gain insight into how best to handle future encounters with extraterrestrial beings. Strangers approached them on the street, thanking them or accusing them of risking the planet's safety. It was overwhelming, exhausting, and isolating all at once. Despite the chaos, Daniel and Claire found solace in each other's company. They met often, sitting in quiet cafes or walking through parks where they could talk without interruption. Their conversations ranged from practical matters, how to ensure humanity remained united, to philosophical ones about the lessons Kaylor had taught them. Both agreed that his presence had changed something fundamental within them, forcing them to confront uncomfortable truths about themselves and their species. "We've always thought of strength as being loud and aggressive," Claire said one evening as they walked along the riverbank. "But Kaylor showed us that real strength is quieter. It's about knowing when to act and when to hold back." Daniel nodded, his hands shoved deep into his coat pockets. "And balance." He kept talking about balance. "I think we're starting to understand what he meant, not just in terms of war, but in everything we do. We can't keep rushing headlong into decisions without thinking about the consequences." Claire smiled faintly. "Funny how it took a God to remind us of something so basic." They both laughed softly, the sound carrying across the water. It was a small moment of peace amid the turmoil, a reminder that even in the darkest times there was still room for connection and hope. Elsewhere, the impact of Kaylor's brief reappearance rippled outward, touching lives in unexpected ways. In classrooms around the world, teachers began incorporating discussions about balance and cooperation into their lessons. Students debated the merits of restraint versus aggression, drawing examples from history and literature. Some schools even introduced new programs aimed at fostering empathy and teamwork, inspired by Kaylor's teachings. Artists, too, found inspiration in the story of the forgotten god. Paintings, sculptures, and songs emerged, each interpreting Kaylor's message in its own way. One particularly popular mural depicted him standing between two armies, his arms outstretched as if holding them apart. Below him, the words, "Strength through balance," were written in bold letters. The image went viral, appearing on posters, t-shirts, and social media feeds worldwide. Even governments started to shift their focus, though progress was slow and uneven. Some nations doubled down on military spending, arguing that preparedness was key to survival. Others invested in initiatives promoting peace and sustainability, citing Kaylor's philosophy as proof that humanity needed to change if it wanted to endure. International summits became more frequent, with leaders attempting to bridge divides and address global challenges collaboratively. Not everyone embraced these changes, of course. Critics argued that Kaylor's ideas were impractical, idealistic nonsense that ignored the harsh realities of power and conflict. Conspiracy theories sprang up, claiming that the entire alien encounter had been staged to manipulate public opinion. Skeptics dismissed Kaylor as a fabrication, a myth created to justify political agendas. But for many, the memory of Kaylor remained vivid, a spark of hope in an uncertain world. His words echoed in their minds, shaping the way they thought and acted. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, society began to shift. Months passed, and the initial frenzy surrounding the alien visitation faded into the background. Life moved forward as it always did. Yet the lessons learned during those tense days lingered, influencing decisions large and small. Cities implemented policies to reduce waste and conserve resources. Communities came together to support those in need, recognizing that unity was a form of strength. Even individuals made changes, choosing kindness over anger, patience over haste. Daniel and Claire continued to play key roles in shaping this new direction. They co-authored articles and gave lectures, sharing their experiences and insights with anyone who would listen. Their message was simple. Humanity had faced a test, and while it hadn't been perfect, it had proven capable of growth. The challenge now was to build on that foundation, ensuring that the next generation inherited a better world. One evening, as they sat on a hill overlooking the city lights, Claire turned to Daniel with a thoughtful expression. "Do you think we'll ever see them again?" she asked quietly. "The aliens?" Daniel replied, following her gaze toward the stars. "Probably. They didn't give us a clear answer before they left. Whatever happens, we'll have to be ready." Claire nodded, her eyes reflecting the distant glow of the night sky. "Do you think we will be?" "I think we're getting there," Daniel said after a pause. "We've already come so far. People are starting to realize that we can't keep doing things the same way and expect different results. That's a start, isn't it?" "It is," Claire agreed, smiling softly. "And maybe that's enough for now." They sat in silence, for a while, watching as the stars twinkled above. Somewhere out there, beyond the reach of human understanding, the aliens continued their journey, observing civilizations and judging their worth. Whether they would return to Earth remained unknown. But for the first time in a long time, humanity felt ready to face whatever came next. As Kaylor had taught them, strength wasn't about domination or destruction. It was about finding harmony. Within chaos, making choices that honored both courage and compassion. Those lessons would stay with them, guiding their steps as they navigated the challenges ahead. And though Kaylor himself was gone, his essence lived on, not as a god to worship, but as a reminder of what humanity could achieve when it chose to rise above its flaws. The greatest battles, after all, were fought not against external enemies, but within oneself. And in that struggle, humanity had taken its first tentative steps toward a brighter future.